What can someone do or say that immediately makes you think they need to get out more? Story 1. I am really upset about people online. Don't get me wrong. Some of you are skilled at getting under my skin, but in reality, we are all just individuals. Whether or not we agree on something or if you are disrespectful, it doesn't matter when I'm offline. Story 2. Moral one-upping. Remember to be kind to retail workers. Don't be dismissive. Excuse me, but that term is derogatory. Don't promote misogyny. Both of you are aware of the struggles faced by the people of Myanmar and are ignoring them because of your bias. Meanwhile, 3 people feel superior as the small boost from outrage hits, and nothing gets accomplished. Story 3. Not having the ability to be formal in both language and dress. They think life is like the internet, and your presentation hardly matters. Story 4. They cannot have a conversation without numerous pop culture references or expressing mundane opinions as if they represent a brave stance, preempting any potential argument. Being over the age of 17 and still believing that being annoying is the same as being funny, because social media has led people to think that any reaction is validation. Story 5. Thinking that the prevailing opinions seen on Reddit or other social media represent the global community is misleading. Reddit largely skews younger, which means users tend to view the world through the lens of a typical younger person. More liberal, lower on the career ladder, less supportive of having children, less religious, etc. This perspective is valid to an extent, but they seem surprised when voters do not always share their views. But everyone I see thinks this way. A perfect example occurred when a Reddit user recently stated, "Most Americans have no problem paying higher taxes because they know it's for the good of the people." This is a clear indication of someone who needs to engage more with the real world. Story 6. Acting like a caricature online and in real life, constantly posting on social media about the same topics repeatedly. Believing that people from a specific group act like stereotypical characters or their in-group stereotype of that group. Exhibiting an extreme victim mentality with no sense of personal accountability, constantly blaming others. Thinking that one radical political idea can create a utopia, engaging in binary thinking, having a very eccentric personal style, possessing a huge sense of entitlement and a massive ego, unable to admit when they are wrong, lacking self-awareness and labeling everyone they dislike as a narcissist. Story 7. Having a singular opinion on a group of people, especially extreme ones, treats groups like hive minds. Story 8. If they become overly emotional when someone does not agree with them completely, perceiving every expressed opinion as a personal attack and lacking tolerance for differing viewpoints. Story 9. Outright hating the opposite gender, whether you are male or female, indicates that if you truly dislike the opposite sex, it may be because you have not interacted with anyone from the opposite sex in person and have only experienced them through polarizing online content. Story 10. Letting a random social media post influence their relationships or their day, whether by getting upset with you or reacting strongly to a post. Repeating unusual buzzwords that are commonly found online, such as "don't perceive me" or "orange peel theory." Having extensive knowledge about minor celebrity drama. Genuinely believing in astrology, conspiracy theories, and other pseudoscience. Story 11. When something bad happens in a piece of fiction and people start losing their minds, clutching their pearls and condemning the creator, poor media literacy and the belief that depiction equals endorsement is something I associate with people who spend too much time online. Story 12. Any extreme of an ideology is a signal. Hatred of women or men creates an atmosphere that conveys information like a closed, narrow information sphere. It resembles a bubble, if you will. Story 13. Constantly asking the internet to make trivial decisions for them. Hey everyone, what flavor of drink should I buy? Hey everyone, do you think I should put a poster on my bedroom wall? Hey everyone, I just got a game. What should I do to enjoy it? Story 14. Poor social skills. Excessive knowledge of memes, social media, or cultural topics. Unhealthy lifestyle, poor diet, lack of exercise, and no social connections. Unrealistic expectations. Personalization of every argument. Story 15. When someone describes a TikTok and asks if you've seen it, I have to say no. Jessica, I didn't come across the video of a gorilla eating its own waste. Story 16. Understanding and using layered memes is important. For example, asking, "Is this loss?" in the correct context and knowing who Chris Chan is, researching any celebrity mentioned to see if they have been cancelled, and then pointing it out to whoever mentioned them. Understanding the sentence "cinnamon shrimp toast guy turned out to be a milkshake duck just like being dad," and grasping phrases like "kid named Finger" and "Mike posting." Using the word "chungus" in any context is also relevant. Criticizing people for agreeing with someone else's opinion, particularly if that person has a history of unpopular opinions, assumes that agreement on one point implies support for all of the other person's views. Any interest in watching 4-hour-long video essays on a certain platform raises questions. Who has time for this? Clearly, I am often online. Story 17. I know a man who is unemployed and spends all his time immersed in conspiracy theories, not just the common ones. He only talks about QAnon, chemtrails, the Illuminati, Freemasons, and claims that Michelle Obama is a man and that every female actress is also a man. The real kicker is his belief that the apocalypse has already happened, along with some strange ideas about the Statue of Liberty. You cannot have a normal conversation with him. Story 18. Staying up all night venting on Reddit about how badly I messed up and either seeking validation or trying to help others. I need to take a break from this app, as insightful as it is. I just wish I had all this world of knowledge at my fingertips years ago. Story 19. It becomes obvious in relationship-related discussions. There is terrible advice and many heavy assumptions about the opposite gender. Whenever I hear all women or all men, I know I will read something extreme that I would never hear in a normal in-person conversation. Story 20. Taking extreme positions without understanding nuances can lead to overlooking the valid points on both sides of an argument. Consider personal finance, for example. Yes, there are income inequality issues that need to be addressed, but some people, especially younger individuals, blame these issues for all their financial struggles. They often refuse to recognize that spending money on Starbucks and food delivery services daily is a path to financial ruin. Story 21. Speaking without tact and making inflammatory statements without consequences. As Mike Tyson said, some people have gone too long without getting punched in the mouth. Story 22. Free Palestine under every post and labeling others as supporters of genocide. Story 23. When they believe or tell you the most absurd things as if they are facts, or when they cannot form an opinion themselves, only saying something is wrong when others mention it, even though they do not understand what they are calling wrong. Story 24. Digging up old screenshots of people who have generally changed for the better is not well received. No one appreciates a redemption story these days. Whatever perceptions people have of you are ingrained in their minds. Story 25. Thinking they know everything. I appreciate your opinion, but just because you believe something doesn't mean I do. Also, terms like Giant, Ohio, and Riz are not necessary. Story 26. Identifying as a combination of contradictory or obscure sexualities and genders can lead to feeling offended when others do not take you seriously or respect your self-imposed oppression. Story 27. They talk as if the United States is the worst economic dystopia, the most hateful, racist, and non-progressive country in the world. Story 28. Trolling refers to overly aggressive, edgy, and antagonistic commentary. It encompasses apathy, the belief that one should not try to improve or change anything, suggesting that attempts to better oneself or the surrounding world are futile. Those who endeavor to make improvements are viewed as foolish for their efforts. This behavior is often characterized by a preoccupation with online gender and cultural conflicts. Story 29. Having primarily online talking points for discussions cannot lead to conversations that are solely focused on online memes or news. Story 30. When individuals lack original thoughts, everything they express is derived from a meme, post, or thread. I worked with a young person, and after a few months, I found it difficult to communicate with him. He would behave as if he were the first to discover something and would repeat it for days. Story 31. Poor conversational skills, including frequent interruptions, socially inappropriate volume levels, excessive use of profanity, and poor listening abilities, overuse of niche internet slang in everyday speech, impractical and controversial political ideas that cannot all be valid, tribalism resulting from excessive time spent in online echo chambers, not limited to politics, gatekeeping based on hobbies, a severely simplistic view of life in other countries. Story 32. Spewing the names of tropes and being seemingly obsessed with them when the discussion of a show arises. Story 33. Having no personality and acting like a random YouTuber, even in real life. Also lacking social skills and unable to talk to the opposite gender, especially males who perceive females online as aliens and are delusional about girls. Story 34. I was briefly arguing with someone who convinced themselves that I don't have friends. It's strange how some people don't believe others have basic social connections or assume you must be a bad friend just because you point out that toxic online behavior is harmful to friendships. Thankfully, there is a block option. In summary, there was a comment section discussing how easily people estrange themselves from others over minor issues. This is not a healthy behavior. Slightly getting your feelings hurt and then cutting someone off is not constructive. Yet, some people online seem to think it is. Story 35. Crown Sable enjoys a berserk and paltry makeshift wasteful fear with a wistful roof. Story 36. People who take things that do not concern them too personally often say something like, "What about the obvious exception to the rule? I saw someone express their opinion that being an organ donor should be something you have to opt out of instead of opting in. Many people commented, but I have a medical condition so I can't donate," as if they are the obvious exception to that opinion. There are individuals who feel the need to shoot the messenger. I once explained a metaphor that someone else wrote, which I did not even agree with. People kept trying to argue with me, and some outright insulted me as if I had created the metaphor myself. I was merely providing an explanation to someone who asked what it meant. Some people struggle to understand empathy and believe that you must be a part of a group in order to defend them. This has happened many times online. One notable instance occurred when I defended individuals in poverty who steal essentials. A man dramatically exclaimed, "I don't want to live among criminals." He assumed that I must be poor and shoplift simply because I said, "People need to eat." He further assumed that, because I must be poor and shoplift, I must also be a drug addict and a violent criminal. Story 37. Some people need to put their phones down and relax. They could go for a walk or apply for a job. Story 38. Using the word woke unironically as a derogatory term often leads to eye-rolling. Story 39. Basically, when they clearly don't understand the significance of a problem in everyday life, or rather, the lack of it. Story 40. Recently, someone linked me to a blog article about an individual who was overly obsessed with politics, specifically left-wing politics related to the month of June. The person wrote essentially a 50-page rant about infecting, in their words, every corporate and government organization with their politics, or else it's the end of the universe. Chill out, log off, touch some grass, and build a couple of Lego sets. That person was completely chronically online. Story 41. People who frequently use words like dystopia and corporations tend to overdo it. Anyone who writes every single sentence as if they are trying to win an argument on Reddit can be quite annoying. Story 42. Worrying about issues that are not important just because you saw a TikTok about it. Story 43. I imagine Reddit users asking their colleagues at work for sources when they mention that the cheesecake at the local brewpub is good. Story 44. The need to constantly label things, especially using internet slang, is abusive and harassing. It can be considered gaslighting and a form of weaponized incompetence. Story 45. Claiming to have numerous mental disorders and frequently discussing them as an excuse for poor behavior. Story 46. Rage baiters are online users who engage in arguments. Seeing an absurd post and replies that simply say, "Cry about it," is cringeworthy. They are essentially a new version of edgy users. Story 47. When my wife thinks it takes me no less than half an hour to use the restroom. No, I got distracted on Reddit. Story 48. arguing over trivial matters that social media platforms have highlighted as divisive, while disregarding the opinions of those who possess real knowledge about the situation, leads to a false sense of righteousness based solely on hours of mindless scrolling. Story 49. When someone starts ranting about how people have been saying foolish things online, I can tell they are usually referring to a single Reddit post or comment they encountered. They tend to inflate the situation, making it seem as if thousands of people are expressing the same foolish ideas. Story 50. Neopronouns are already a strange concept for me, but there are online profiles where individuals use the idea merely to be eye-catching and seek attention. I have seen people use emojis like flower emoji and sometimes completely random words like bee. I have never encountered someone using those unironically without immediately realizing they are just seeking attention. Moreover, this is harmful to anyone who genuinely identifies with unconventional identities because it groups them with those seeking attention inappropriately. I have noticed a significant correlation between people who use quirky symbols for attention and those who fake disorders for similar reasons, which is damaging for the same reasons. Story 51. I would genuinely prefer to be trapped in a forest with Adam Johnson than with any wild bear or tiger, as suggested by TikTok. Story 52. There are numerous posts discussing how men are treated poorly or worse than women. It is important to recognize that this is still largely a man's world. Story 53. Caring about how high someone's television is mounted on their wall. Caring about the gaps in toilet stalls. Caring about what kind of vehicle, such as a pickup truck, people choose to buy, regardless of whether they can justify owning one. Caring about nearly anything that the vast majority of people do not consider in a given day. Story 54. Being extremely left-wing or right-wing. Understanding many memes. Believing that websites should prohibit individuals for dissenting opinions. Story 55. Describing things as mediocre or generally performing a dislike for something that others appreciate. Story 56. Seriously, I never get upset with a person online. For all I know, it could be a 13-year-old wise guy or even worse, an overweight senior whom I'm not trying to give a heart attack to. Story 57. Being familiar with the phrases chronically online, terminally online, and large boulder the size of a small boulder. Story 58. When you focus your entire personality on being offended or outraged by issues that the general public does not care about. Story 59. Posting every hour on Twitter. Like some people feel the need to share every detail as they go through life. Story 60. They are excessively sexual and make non-sexual things seem sexually charged, to the point of being obsessive. Story 61. When people bring online language into real life, they begin to speak in the same way they do online during in-person conversations. Story 62. Someone who is often online and cannot stop may appear to be creating a new pseudo-medical term to elevate themselves above others who spend their lives differently, rendering them irrelevant for social interaction. Story 63. They think we are more divided than we actually are. Go mingle with people. Log off the internet and connect with nature. You will find that we, out here, are not judging everyone based on their opinions and instead are just being nice, civil, and cooperative with one another. We do not care if you disagree with us. We are just trying to get through our day, share a few smiles and kind words, and go home. It is surprisingly normal in the real world. Story 64. The biggest issue I think of is being overconfident in your knowledge when you only understand the fundamentals of a topic. The upvote system on Reddit, in particular, leads people to believe their ideas and arguments are more profound and correct than they really are. Many simplistic and flawed points are amplified, giving people a distorted perception of how informed they or someone else actually is. Story 65. This post was just above your question in my feed. I think that qualifies. Story 66. Insomnia and poor sleep are often caused by the inability to put down your phone or to stop watching television at night. There are studies that support this claim. Story 67. Apparently, I am expected to be personally offended because two things use the same word to describe a long period of time. What's next? Claiming touch grass discriminates against people without lawns. Story 68. Hating any group instantly makes me think you are constantly scrolling through social media. Story 69. Being constantly online is concerning. I often see people with their faces fixed on their phones, whether in public, at the gym, or during dinner. Story 70. Constantly exploring new topics. I have a friend who is a good, smart person, but he spends too much time online seeking knowledge. I suspect that he may be on the spectrum due to his rigid and all-or-nothing thinking, as he often spends excessive time researching various subjects. Currently, he is diving into conspiracy theories such as UFOs, COVID-19, and the moon landing. His mental health would improve significantly if he weren't online as much. Story 71. Having viewpoints on life that have no basis in reality is prevalent among certain online communities. Remember, only a Sith deals in absolutes. Story 72. Talking about internet debates with strangers in real life, on the phone, or via text. Deep dives into conspiracy theories. Sending links to video content that are more than 30 minutes long about factual topics as if others have time for that. Story 73. They do not listen to the wisdom of the elders they interact with. These older individuals have lived life without the internet. They possess valuable experience. They have been there and can offer insights that are richer than those of younger generations. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.